Okay, well, let's just do a brief review of last night. You may have been a bit tired last night. So we're preparing for the beginning of Advent, and Advent is a preparation for Christmas, and we celebrate something like a feast like Christmas according to the level of our preparation, really, how well prepared we are, where we are in our own self. If we're, our minds are agitated and confused and our feet are not touching the ground, then the celebration of those spiritual moments will be confused and uncertain. So, and this is what I meant by sacred time. If we have a life, as we do in our modern technological and consumer culture, a life that has lost the sense of sacred time, which interweaves with ordinary time, business time, working time, then life becomes really quite monochrome, really quite flat. But if we can recover this sense of sacred time, then it's as if color is released into our life, and the color of Advent is purple, which is the color of active preparation, active involvement in preparing ourselves. And if that happens, then something transformative is released in time and in our daily lives. A sense of expectancy, a sense of certainty within all the uncertainties of life, a sense of an imminent revelation of reality. I mean, this is really what Advent is in particular, isn't it? We're waiting for this appearance, and it's in the womb of time waiting to be delivered, the person of Christ. And as I say, if we're engaging with this encounter with time, daily life and so on, then come and sit down. Then we'll find that what we're waiting for happens. It won't disappoint us, and that sense of expectancy will not be an illusion. In many other experiences of life and many things that we wait for or hope for, there is a disappointment. We don't get what we want, or what we're waiting for doesn't happen or doesn't happen on time. And but if we learn how to enter into this experience of time, which Advent prepares us for and is a symbol of, then even though life is, of course, full of uncertainties, there is a core certainty, a hope. It's a hope. And hope is not very different from just daydreams or expectations or things we're longing for in a fantasy kind of way. Hope is actually when we encounter the reality of time and of what time is leading us towards. So those were some of the things I was saying last night, just to understand why we have a retreat, to help us to understand the meaning of this liturgical season, or of all liturgical seasons, really. And as Advent is very obviously about preparing and awaiting for Christmas, it teaches us something about waiting and about being present. To be really present is to learn the nature of waiting. if we are really present to the moment, then we are in touch with the real nature of waiting, the spiritual meaning of waiting. It's not our consumer experience of waiting, you know. Amazon Prime is supposed to come the next day, and it doesn't come, and we get annoyed, or the thing we ordered doesn't come on time. It's not that kind of waiting. It's a deeper and more integral experience of the unfolding of reality. And of course, our meditation, day by day, does this for us. There's the regular practice of meditation. It has a transformative effect on our lives. And even people who struggle with the regularity or the discipline of meditation, they're often very aware that meditation is transformative. If they did it, they know that they would have certain beneficial results. But nevertheless, they get caught up in the flow of activity, or in agitated action rather than contemplative action. And so even though they know at one level that meditation would be transformative in the best possible way, they don't do it, they can't do it, they run away from it. It brings us, of course, into self-knowledge, this learning process. Every discipline is a learning, and that is going to awaken our self-knowledge, our self-awareness of our faults and of our virtues as well. So I was, and then we finished yesterday talking about how Advent is about waiting for the one who is also waiting for us. It's not that we're passive waiters. We are actually in relationship to the one who is coming towards us. And the one who's coming towards us, this is God's love coming towards us in the person of Jesus, the incarnation of the Word, that this personal love coming towards us, is longing for us. God loves us. God loved the world so much that he sent his only Son into the world. So there is this longing and this desire, which of course is present in all love, in the love of God being manifested to us in the coming of Jesus. And it's this human-divine relationship in waiting and in encountering, in this whole process in faith of meeting God in the course of our life at different stages, or at all stages of our life. It's this reciprocity, or this mutual waiting and mutual meeting, that explains, one of the major characteristics of mystical literature. I mean, the way religious people, religious thinkers describe the nature of God or the mystery of God is in two dialects, two kinds of language. One of them is the more cerebral, more philosophical, more abstract, rational, logical language. And the other is the mystical language, which is characterized most of all by the erotic element. And so in the imagination and in the writings of the great mystics, we frequently find carnal imagery drawn from the human experience of love and desire, fulfillment and satisfaction and loss, we find that describing our deepest spiritual intuitions and experience. So find it in St. Teresa, you find it everywhere. John of the Cross, you find it everywhere. So, and we find it in Rumi, for example, where he has a poem which I thought rather beautifully sums up Advent. He says, and again in Rumi, the great poet of love, you're never quite sure whether he's being erotic or mystical, or both. I mean, primarily it's mystical, but so he says, lovers don't just finally meet somewhere. They are in each other all along. Lovers don't just meet somewhere, when the train comes in, but they are with each other, or in each other, he says, all along. And this is the deeper, more true meaning of waiting, really. That what we're waiting for is already here. We are already in communion with what is coming to birth or what will be born in some form at some time. So this all means really that Advent is a deep reflection on time. St. Augustine said that Book 11 of the Confessions is a famous reflection on time. He said everybody knows what time is, but if you try to explain it, then you find you can't. So we know what past and future is, but actually when you start to look into it, you see that it's not quite as black and white as we think. And I think our own sense of meaning in life, as we reflect, as we experience the meaning of our lives, we understand this. We see how the past and the future are interwoven at some level, at this level of the present, the deeper meaning of the present, not just the skimming the surface of events and busyness and the succession of chronological moments, but at the deeper level of the present, past and future are in some kind of dance together. So this led St. Augustine to conclude really that time is in the mind. It's present in the mind and it's measured by the mind. This is, you might call a more subjective understanding of time, but one that we're very familiar with. Why time sometimes seems to be painful and to go slowly, and sometimes it's blissful and it flies. So time is a very subjective experience. But at the same time, he says, time is a creation of God. And we know from new physics that time came into existence with the Big Bang. So this reflects Augustine's idea that time is a creature of God as well. So it's not just illusory then. Time isn't purely subjective. We know things come to an end. Mortality, the end of every day, the loss of the people we love, and our own bodies remind us continuously. Keep death always before your eyes, St. Benedict says, in order to live clearly and fully, be aware. So time is not just subjective, it's very objective. We can't live forever. We have to go through death or many deaths in different ways. So it's not just illusory, But at the same time, it's not absolutely real. So what happens at the end of time is the question that gives meaning to life. And in a spiritual understanding of this meaning, we say that time is a bridge to eternity. We have to walk across this bridge in a certain direction. We can't walk backwards, we have to walk from one side to the other, from the beginning to the end. And we never know quite where the middle is. So there's certainty and there's uncertainty. We don't know how much longer the walk is, but we know that we have to walk in that direction. T.S. Eliot says, only through time, time is conquered. So this is incarnational. This is not abstract. This is not just Platonic. This is an insight into reality that is worked out through daily life, relationships, moods, attachments, detachments, the whole process. So our lives matter. Every life matters. Not only the great lives, about whom biographies are written, but every life, however hidden or insignificant, matters for the whole picture. Every life, in a sense, is equally interesting, actually, and equally important, equally valuable. Our personal histories matter, and we're constantly rewriting our history. We know the main events of our life, and we repeat these, or we construct our narrative of the self around these major events or major themes. But the meaning of it can change. It can change quite dramatically. So our lives, time itself, is a vehicle, a sacred vehicle on our journey to God. And this is true of all of us. And so when we get on a train and we find ourselves sitting with a certain number of individuals in the railway carriage, we have a sense that we are on the same journey with them. You may speak to them, you may not, but you know very clearly you're on the same journey. And in fact, if we pull back to the bigger picture, we could say we are all on the same journey. We are all time travelers together. Maybe different carriages, but we are all in the same journey, on the same journey. So this understanding of time and waiting, which arises from what I'll talk about in a moment, if we have this consciousness, this awareness of our lives as having this kind of meaning and wonder, it's going to create a sense of community, isn't it? A sense of acceptance of other people on this journey with us. And even the stranger we meet is not entirely a stranger, because we share this same journey in this same direction together. There's a film called Interstellar. So, how many of you have seen that? Interstellar. Not many. So, it's some of you may remember the film called 2001: A Space Odyssey. Came out in the 70s, or it was the great psychedelic film of its generation, and Interstellar is the updated version with modern physics and modern concerns integrated into it. So I'm going to do it all, but it starts with an apocalyptic landscape. The ecological crisis has begun to make make the Earth uninhabitable, and humanity has reached the tipping point, and there's no going back. We can't restore the planet will continue, but it's not habitable for humans anymore. So humanity has to be saved, and of course it's the Americans who will do it. But it's all right. They're paying for the film, so they can. So the world has to be saved. So we have to look for another planet. A new world needs to be sought. And this new world, finding this new world, looking for it, must lead us through other dimensions of reality, to new discoveries about ourselves, new dimensions of ourselves. That's what makes it more than just a science fiction film. It's one really very much where, although it's not a religious film, one can see how the new science, the new insights into the universe coincide with deep and perennial spiritual insights. So one of the first things that they discover as they go off to try to find a new planet is the relativity of time. So at one point, some of the crew go down onto this planet to look for something, but some of the crew remain in the spacecraft. But the time is passing differently for those in the spacecraft to those on the planet. And of course, the people on the planet, the explorers who've gone down to the planet, stayed longer than they should. And by the time they get back, the poor guy who was waiting for them has aged about 40 years. So, in the end, however, the explorers, the seekers, seeking for a new home, a new world, as we all are, have to go into the black hole. It's only by going into this black hole that they will be able to get back home and deliver the information and share the discoveries they've made. So going into the black hole of death is quite frightening, of course, and very turbulent. And you are out of control. You can no longer control the spacecraft. And there is a sort of a moment of blackout. But when you've got through the black hole, you find that everything that was familiar to you has been transformed. Everything. Everything, all the assumptions we make about reality, about ourselves, everything that has become familiar over time is now different. And there is a new way of being in reality. The secret that they learn, and this is really the sort of the takeaway from the film, is that the two forces in the universe that pass through all dimensions. We're familiar with 4 dimensions, of which time is one, up, down, cross, and time. But string theory in physics imagines that there are 10 dimensions, the 10th of which is infinite possibility. And there are other theories, I think they have more dimensions, but anyway, there's more to life than we think, more to reality than we think. So having passed through the black hole, they are now in other dimensions of reality. But what they learn, and one character, through his love for his daughter, that he had to leave behind in order to go and save the world, that's the specific. We're thinking of Advent as waiting for a specific birth, which sums up all birth. So in this film, there's this one relationship that reveals and illustrates a universal truth. And the universal truth is that there are 2 forces in the universe that pass through all dimensions of reality. And these 2 forces are gravity and love. So this is quite a beautiful film. Not perfect, but quite a beautiful film. It is a modern kind of parable for this journey of personal transformation, which concerns us today more and more. We're more and more concerned and aware of life as a personal journey, and a journey with depth and meaning. And we're very concerned and anxious because the conditions of life that we have created often seem to interfere with this purpose. The conditions of life we've created in society and the culture we live in, the materialistic and culture that dehumanizes us so easily, that these conditions of life seem to make it more difficult to engage with life, our own personal journey of life, as a spiritual journey. If we engage with this meaning of life as a journey, as a process of transformation, then daily life changes. Things that once looked familiar now look different. Things that we thought we were trapped by, we now realize we are free from. I was in a classroom in South Africa recently with some children, 9-year-olds, and introduced meditation to them, I think for the first time maybe. And I've come to realize that with children, you don't, after the meditation, you don't say, "Are there any questions?" Because the only question they really want to ask is, "Can I ring the bell?" Okay. But if you ask them, what did you think? Well, did you like the meditation? Was it nice? They will give you an immediate 100% honest answer. And one child put up his hand and said, "I think that was the longest time we have been quiet in this classroom ever." And then another child put up his hand, and he was moving his hands in a funny way. And he said, when we were meditating, I wasn't playing with my hands. And I didn't know what he meant until the teacher told me afterwards that this poor boy is already 9 years old, addicted to video games. So much so that he plays them all night and he's too tired in the morning to come to school. But what was he saying? I think he was saying that this addiction is so ingrained in him that even when he's not in front of a screen or playing with the console or whatever, that in his mind he's playing it in his mind. It's become an obsessive, addictive fixture in his mind. But during those few times of meditation, a few minutes of meditation, he was aware that he was not doing that. He was aware that he was not doing it. Just as the other boy was aware that they were being unusually quiet. So what seemed familiar now was different for them. And the difference of their perception arose from some change that took place in them through the experience of stillness. And it's the same with us in a more complicated way, perhaps. As we integrate the times of meditation in our lives, we find that experiences like anxiety, habits of mind, like anxiety or stress, the feeling of separation, the feeling of exclusion, are dissolved. And time is reimagined as we learn to be still and we realize what waiting really means. It isn't easy for us to get to that point, but even if we are not there yet, we know that we are moving towards it and it is moving towards us. If we don't have that sense of engagement with the process, then we will give up meditation and we won't come back to it. But if we have that connection, then even though it seems we're not good meditators and we're not getting there very quickly, nevertheless we know that we are on the way. We're walking across the bridge in the right direction, and we haven't got stuck. And what is it then that gives us this sense of connection? Well, I think it's the experience of being still or moving into the stillness together. The realization that we are time travelers together, that we are a community. Meditation creates community, community supports our meditation. Now, the negative states of mind of anxiety, stress, separation, exclusion, addiction, these negative states may reform frequently. We may be free of them for a while, and then they come back. But if we have a regular practice, if the discipline is forming itself in us, then when these negative states come back, they come back increasingly weaker or less aggressive. And if, as this happens, we also come to realize, and it's also a game changer in our understanding of time and how we use time, we realize that these times of meditation are, as John Main said, the most important times of the day. And of course, on many occasions, for many days, or many years sometimes, in this learning process, you don't really believe that, because you don't put it into practice. There's always something else that we could do. But increasingly, hopefully, we do come to know what that means for ourselves. This cannot be an external discipline. We just realize this in community, of course, when you're living with a group of people, or even if you have a meditation group every week. This is not a discipline that can be imposed on others, but it's something that you hope everyone involved is learning. So what we learn is that the quickest way to where we are going is to be still. The quickest in the sense of the most direct way. I was looking up a journey I have to make sometime next year, and choosing the right time and to leave and so on to arrive, and then some of the connection, some of them have, you notice, have 2 or 3 transfers, which of course adds a lot of boring time to the journey and having to wait and maybe missing the connection. So there are different kinds of journeys, but the ones that are most desirable are the direct ones. So meditation has this directness. It doesn't speed up the process, except it does in a way. It does speed up the process. And our experience of time is relatively different from those who don't meditate. And the effect that the meditator has, the contemplative group has on the people around them is subtle, but also very tangible. Because they are in time, but differently from the way other people are in time. Doesn't mean they're better, but they are actually different in their experience of time. So, that's enough on time. Time to stop. But I think I hope, for all of us here, those of you who've come and those of you who are in the community who are taking part, that the retreat will be an experience of this subtle transformation, which I think all of us here have already some experience and wisdom about. But as it is a wonderful thing to know, there's always more to know about it. So I hope that for each of us it will be a deepening in that sense of the meaning of the journey we're making. And the times of meditation are obviously the most important times of the day.